I paid off a $347,000 craftsman home for my father's retirement. I had the deed notarized, the utilities transferred, and a welcome basket sitting on the kitchen counter with his favorite instant coffee and a crossword puzzle book. When I pulled into the driveway, my sister-in-law was standing on the front porch in a bathrobe, watering my father's plants like she owned them. My father was sitting in his truck in his own driveway, engine off, hands on the wheel, not moving. My brother opened the front door from the inside and waved at me like I was a guest. My name is Claire. I am 31 years old, and I am a certified public accountant. I work for a mid-sized firm downtown where I have never once been late to a meeting, never once missed a filing deadline, and have not taken a full week of vacation in 4 years. I have a one-bedroom apartment that I keep spotless because chaos in my environment translates directly to chaos in my thinking, and I cannot afford that. I eat the same breakfast every weekday. I track my spending in a spreadsheet I have been updating since I was 19. This is not because I am boring. It is because I was raised by a man who lost everything once, and I decided very early that I would never let that happen again. My father worked as a machinist for 38 years at the same manufacturing plant. He wore the same steel-toed boots until the soles separated. He packed his own lunch every single day, usually a sandwich and an apple and a thermos of coffee so strong it could strip paint. He never complained. When my mother got sick, he worked double shifts to cover what insurance wouldn't. When she passed, he kept working because stopping would have meant feeling it fully, and a man like my father survives by moving forward. He retired in March, not because he wanted to, but because the plant closed and his knees had finally said enough. He moved into a rental apartment 2 cities away from his old house, the one he and my mother had shared, which he sold quietly and without ceremony after she was gone because the mortgage had become too much on one income. The apartment had thin walls and a neighbor who played bass guitar at 11 at night. He said it was fine. He said everything was fine. My father has never once in his life asked me for anything. My brother is 3 years younger than me and has never, not once, held a job for more than 14 months. He is charming in the way that people who have never been held accountable tend to be charming. He tells stories well. He laughs easily. He has a gift for making other people feel like the problem when he is the one who borrowed money and forgot to mention it was a loan. His wife is the kind of woman who refers to other people's hard work as a family resource and says things like, "We're all one unit," when she means she would like access to something that isn't hers. Over the last 6 years, I had paid for my brother's car insurance 3 separate times. I had co-signed an apartment lease after his second eviction that cost me $4,000 when he stopped paying rent, and the management company came after the guarantor. I had sent money for groceries, for his kids' school supplies, for a transmission repair, for a deposit on a storage unit after they got evicted a 3rd time. My father had given what little he could too, quietly and without telling me, because he didn't want me to think less of my brother. I found out about most of it later, in pieces, the way you find out about anything my brother is involved in. When I found the house, I knew immediately. It was a 1940s craftsman bungalow in a quiet neighborhood 20 minutes from my father's rental apartment. 3 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, a covered front porch with a swing, and a backyard with an oak tree old enough to have its own personality. The listing said the owners were relocating. The price was $347,000, which was not cheap, but which I had been saving toward for 5 years without knowing exactly what I was saving for. Now I knew. I structured the purchase carefully. The deed went into my father's name alone. I set up automatic payments from a dedicated account I funded to cover the property taxes for 15 years. I paid the homeowners association fees 12 months in advance and read the entire CC&R document, all 41 pages of it, on a Tuesday night with a highlighter. I hired a locksmith to install new deadbolts on both exterior doors. I had the HVAC serviced, the gutters cleaned, and a new water heater installed before my father ever saw the place. I told him about it on a Sunday in April. We drove over together, just the 2 of us. He walked through the front door and stood in the living room for a long moment without saying anything. He ran his hand along the built-in bookshelf beside the fireplace. He looked out the kitchen window at the oak tree in the backyard. He turned to me and his eyes were red at the edges, and he cleared his throat twice before he said anything. He said, "Your mother would have loved this kitchen." That was all. I had to go stand in the hallway for a minute. We had lunch on the front porch that day. He said he'd plant tomatoes in the backyard in June. He said he liked the light in the morning room. He asked me twice if I was sure, and I told him twice that I had never been more sure of anything. I drove home feeling something I did not have a clean word for, Something like relief, mixed with the specific kind of joy you feel when something you planned for a long time finally lands exactly right. I did not tell my brother. I should be precise about that. I made a deliberate choice not to tell him because there was no version of that conversation that ended with him being happy for our father. There was only the version where he immediately began calculating what it meant for him. I had done enough of those calculations on his behalf over the years. My father moved in on a Saturday in May. I helped him unpack boxes and hang his tools in the garage and put his books on the built-in shelves. He made us both coffee in a pot that was too large for one person, and we sat on the porch swing as the sun went down. It was a good day, one of the best I can remember. He posted a photo on Facebook that evening. Just the porch, the swing, the fading light through the oak leaves. He captioned it "New Chapter." He did not tag the address. He did not mention me. But my brother's wife has an eye for real estate details the way other people have an eye for fashion, and she reverse searched the image within 48 hours and found the street. My brother called my father the next morning, and my father, who is a genuinely kind man with a fundamental inability to be unkind to his children even when they deserve it, confirmed the address when asked directly. He thought it was a casual question. He told me this later with the expression of a man who already knows what he did wrong and does not need to hear it said aloud. They arrived 4 days later, a Tuesday, which I know because that is when my father sent me a text that said simply, "Your brother stopped by with the family. I think they may be staying for a bit." Then he stopped answering his phone. I called twice, left a voicemail, texted again. I was in the middle of a quarterly audit, but I closed my laptop and got in the car. The drive was 45 minutes. I spent most of it coaching myself into calm because I knew if I walked in hot, I would lose every advantage. I knew my brother. He thrived in chaos. He needed me emotional so he could redirect the conversation away from the facts and toward the feelings. I was not going to give him that. When I pulled up, my father's truck was in the driveway next to my brother's SUV, which had a cracked taillight I recognized from the last time I'd seen it in my rearview mirror pulling out of a gas station without paying me back for the fuel. My sister-in-law was on the porch. When she saw my car, something moved across her face that was almost nervousness before she rearranged it into a smile. My father was sitting on the porch swing in the corner, his hands folded in his lap. He looked like a man waiting for a bus in a city he didn't recognize. I kissed his cheek and he gripped my hand briefly and said nothing. Inside, my brother was standing in the living room with a mug of my father's coffee explaining to the empty air that the setup was inefficient. The kids' overnight bags were already open on the floor of the guest room. My nephew's tablet was plugged into an outlet in the hallway. My sister-in-law's dry shampoo was in the bathroom. My brother turned when I came in. He spread his arms wide like I was the person he had been waiting to see most in the world. Claire. Finally, we were just talking about how this place makes no sense for one person. I set my bag on the kitchen table. I did not hug him. "Where is Dad sleeping?" He waved a hand. "He's on the porch. He loves the porch. We put our stuff in the big bedroom because of the kids. They need the space. It's temporary while we sort some things out." He picked up the coffee mug again. "You should have told me about this place. We could have done the whole thing together, made it a family project." My sister-in-law appeared in the doorway. "It really is such a good find. We were thinking we could convert the garage into a studio for when we need some extra income. Vrbo is huge in this neighborhood." I looked at her for a moment. Then I looked at my brother. Then I said, "Sit down." He laughed. "Claire, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. Sit down, please." He stayed standing, but the laugh faded slightly. My sister-in-law stayed in the doorway. I opened my bag and took out a folder. I had brought it with me the way I bring everything important, in a labeled folder, in chronological order, with a copy. I put the deed on the kitchen table first. This is the recorded deed for this property. It is in Dad's name, registered with the county, filed 6 weeks ago. He is the sole owner. My brother looked at it. "Right, and he's our father. Family is family." "This," I said, placing the second document beside it, "is the Homeowners Association CC and ours, which govern this property." Section 12. Paragraph 4. Occupancy is restricted to the deed holder and immediate family members defined as spouse or dependent children under 18. You are 38 years old. Your wife is not a dependent child. Neither are you. My sister-in-law made a sound. That cannot be enforceable. It was enforced against the previous owner's adult son in 2019. There is a citation on the last page. I had highlighted it. My brother's jaw was doing something complicated. "So what? You're going to call the HOA on your own family?" "I'm going to do whatever I need to do to ensure that my father is comfortable in his own home." I placed the third document on the table. It was a printout of a text exchange between my brother and his wife that my father had accidentally been included in when my brother forgot to remove him from a group thread. In it, my sister-in-law had written the square footage is actually great for two families, and my brother had responded, once he's settled, we can suggest a formal arrangement. It was dated the same week my father moved in. My sister-in-law's face went a particular shade of careful. That was a private conversation. Dad was in the thread, I said. He forwarded it to me. He didn't know if it was important. It is. My brother set the coffee mug down hard enough that it clicked against the counter. You bought him a house and now you think you run everything? You always do this. Claire, you pay for something and then you hold it over people like a weapon. I let that land. I had expected some version of it. I didn't hold anything over anyone until you moved your family into his bedroom and started planning Vrbo listings for a property you don't own. We need somewhere to be. Our landlord is not renewing our lease. I know. That's the third time in 4 years. I've watched it happen. I've helped cover the damage each time. That ends today. I looked at him. My voice was level. I had used it in harder rooms than this. Here's what happens now. You pack your family's things. You move to your next temporary arrangement, whatever that looks like. You apologize to Dad for walking into his house and displacing him in the first week of his retirement. And you don't come back without calling first and being told yes. My brother's face did the full sequence. Disbelief, then anger, then the particular calculation of someone deciding how hard to push. You cannot make me leave. I took out my phone and placed it on the table face up. There was a drafted email on the screen addressed to the HOA property manager. Attached were the CC&Rs, the deed, and a summary of the unauthorized occupancy. Beside it, a second tab, a contact form for the county assessor's office flagging a potential homestead fraud inquiry, which applied because my brother had told at least 2 people I knew that he was using my father's address for his car registration without permission. He stared at the phone. My sister-in-law said, "You would really do that to your own brother." "I would do that for my father," I said, every single time. A silence settled over the kitchen. My nephew appeared in the doorway, 7 years old and bewildered, holding a foam sword. My sister-in-law shooed him back toward the guest room. My brother looked at the documents on the table. Then he looked at me. Then he looked at the window. "Mom would be ashamed of you," he said. That one I had not prepared for. It landed somewhere between my ribs and I felt it move through me like cold water. I waited until I was sure of my voice. "Mom worked double shifts, so your guitar lessons would not be canceled after you quit after 3 weeks. She would be ashamed of exactly one person in this room, and it is not me." He left the kitchen. I heard him in the guest room, speaking in a low, furious voice to his wife. I walked out to the porch and sat on the swing next to my father. He said, "I should have called you sooner. You called me exactly when you needed to." I didn't know how to say no to him. I never learned that. He looked out at the oak tree. The afternoon light was coming through the leaves in pieces. She had a way of saying no that didn't feel like a door closing. I always made it feel like a door closing. "You didn't close any doors today," I said. "I did. That's my job." He almost smiled. "When did that become your job?" "About the same time I learned to read lease agreements," I said. He laughed, quietly. The way my father laughs when something is both funny and a little sad. The packing took 2 hours. My sister-in-law performed the exit with theatrical efficiency, making sure every bag zipper was loud and every cabinet she checked was left slightly open. My brother did not speak to me. My nephew asked his mother 3 times where they were going, and each time she said, "We're figuring it out," in a tone designed to make me feel like a villain. I sat at the kitchen table and helped my father go through a box of old photographs he had been meaning to sort since March. Before they pulled out of the driveway, my brother appeared in the kitchen doorway one last time. He looked like he was deciding whether to say something that would matter or something that would just land. He chose the second. "Don't expect me at Thanksgiving. I'll update the head count," I said. He left. The silence after a difficult thing is not empty. It has texture and weight and its own kind of color. The house sounded different after they were gone. Fuller, somehow, even though there were fewer people in it. My father made sandwiches for dinner. We ate them at the kitchen table, and he told me about the couple who had lived in this house before him, how the agent had mentioned they were teachers who were retiring to be near their grandchildren in Colorado. My father liked knowing that. He liked that the house had been cared for by people who cared about things. He said he could feel it in the floors. I was washing the dishes when my brother's first text arrived. Classic Claire, always the hero. You bought a house and declared yourself the boss of the family. I hope it was worth it. My sister-in-law sent a separate one 20 minutes later. Just so you know, what you did today was not generous. It was control. You don't give gifts. You build leverage. I read both of them once, put my phone in my pocket, and finished the dishes. Over the next 2 weeks, the campaign was methodical, which I had not expected from my brother because he typically prefers the spectacular to the sustained. He posted a vague but pointed Facebook status about family members who use money as a substitute for love. He texted 3 cousins some version of a story in which I had purchased a property and denied our father a relationship with his grandchildren. He called our aunt, who called me, genuinely worried, because she had only heard one side and my brother had cried on the phone, which he is very good at when he wants to be. I called my aunt back. I told her the address, the purchase amount, and the sequence of events in order. I offered to email her the deed and the HOA documents. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "Oh, well, that is quite different." She said she would call my brother. I told her she didn't need to do that on my account. I wrote one email. It went to my brother and my sister-in-law, and I copied my father's personal attorney, who I had already briefed. It said that all future communication regarding the property would go through me professionally, that neither of them had any legal standing in relation to the property, and that any attempt to contact my father in a manner intended to pressure or distress him would be documented and handled accordingly. I did not say what accordingly meant. I did not have to. The text stopped. The Facebook post was deleted. 3 days of silence, then a week. On a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the eviction, I got a call from my father. His voice was strange. He said, "Honey, your brother is outside. He says he has legal paperwork. He says I agreed to something." "Claire, I did not sign anything." I said, "Go inside. Lock the front door. Do not open it." I had a doorbell camera feed already pulled up on my laptop before I had finished the sentence. I could see my brother standing on the front porch holding a printed document, his wife in the driveway with the car running. My brother was speaking to the door. I could not hear him, but I could see my father's silhouette through the frosted glass of the side light, standing still, not opening the door. I looked at the document my brother was holding toward the camera. It took me a moment to understand what I was seeing. It appeared to be a notarized agreement transferring occupancy rights. The signature at the bottom was meant to look like my father's. I knew my father's signature. He loops his G in a way no one else in the family does. This signature did not loop the G. I took a screenshot, clean and time-stamped by the camera system. I called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation. A forged document, a man I believed to be my brother, attempting to use it to claim occupancy rights at a property where he had already been asked to leave. The dispatcher took the report number and told me an officer would do a welfare check. Then I texted my brother one message. It was 3 sentences. "I have a screenshot of the document you're holding, and I have already spoken to the police. What you are attempting is forgery of a legal instrument, which in this state is a felony. The officer should arrive in about 10 minutes. His car was out of the driveway in 4 minutes. The officer arrived, did a walkthrough with my father, took his statement, filed a report. My father sat at his kitchen table and gave a calm and precise account of events. 38 years in a machine shop will do that for you. He does not rattle easily. He was rattled now, but he held it together, and when the officer left, he called me back and said, "I think that might be the last of it." I said I hoped so. I said I had put a copy of the police report in the same drawer as the deed and the HOA documents. I told him to call me if anything else happened, any hour. He said, "Claire, you've spent a lot of your life cleaning up after situations I should have prevented." I said, "You spent a lot of your life making sure I had what I needed to clean them up." A pause. Then, "Your mother really would have loved this kitchen." I had to stop for a moment again. I told him I'd come up that weekend and we'd find out which tomato variety grew best in that backyard. He said he'd already started some seeds in paper cups on the windowsill. I said that sounded exactly right. The weekend I came up, it was a Saturday in June, warm and slow, the way Saturdays in June should be. I fixed a hinge on the back gate that had been sticking. My father and I made too much pasta for 2 people and ate it on the porch. He had found a box of my mother's recipe cards in the moving boxes and he had them propped open on the kitchen counter, the ones she had written in her specific looping handwriting on index cards she kept in a metal tin. He said he was going to try the pot roast next week. He said he needed more practice with the oven. It ran a little hot. After dinner, he sat in his chair with a book and I sat across from him with my laptop, doing nothing particularly urgent, and the evening came in through the windows in the way evenings do in a house that has good light, slow and golden, and entirely unhurried. My phone buzzed once. A text from an unfamiliar number. It was my nephew. Not the little one, the older one, my brother's son from his first relationship, the one who is 13 and who I had not heard from in almost a year. It said, "Hey, I heard what happened. I think Grandpa deserves to be happy. Tell him I said hi." I wrote back, "He'll be glad to hear that. You're welcome here anytime. You know that." A long pause. Then, "Yeah, okay." I set the phone down and looked at my father. He was absorbed in his book, his reading glasses low on his nose, his feet up on the ottoman I had found at an estate sale 2 towns over. The lamp beside him threw a small, warm circle of light. The house was quiet in the specific way that a house is quiet when the people inside it are safe. I have spent most of my adult life believing that the responsible thing and the loving thing were the same thing. I believed that covering the gap, absorbing the cost, writing the check, was how you showed love to people who needed it. It took me a long time to understand that those two things are not the same. Responsibility without a limit is not love. It is a slow erasure of yourself in someone else's name. Love is a structure. It has walls and a foundation, and it requires maintenance. It requires someone to say, "This far and no further," and to mean it, and to stand in the doorway until the person on the other side understands that the door will hold. That is not cruelty. That is architecture. That is how you build something that lasts. My brother may tell a version of this story in which I am the one who broke our family. In his version, I purchased loyalty and called it a gift. And when people didn't perform the gratitude correctly, I took my toys and went home. He is a good storyteller. I have always said so. But the best stories are not the ones told loudest. They are the ones with the most accurate details. The deed is in my father's name. The locks have 2 keys, one for him and one in my fireproof safe. The property taxes are paid through 2038. The tomatoes are in the ground. Our family is not broken. It was reorganized around the parts that could hold weight. My brother can return when he is ready to be a son rather than an extraction. My nephew knows where the porch swing is. My father is reading a book in a chair that belongs to him, in a house that is entirely and irrevocably his, and on Sunday mornings he makes coffee that is still too strong for any reasonable person. Some things you build with money, but what holds them up is something else entirely. It is the decision, made quietly and without applause, to stop funding the fire and start protecting the house. The house is warm. The cameras are on. My father is at peace. That is what the gift was always for.